Good evening, and welcome to Going for Two. This is the only YouTube podcast in human record history to feature a male and female host drinking our way through the important topics of the day, as long as they touch the football world and not in that way. Although tonight we may actually delve outside football. Whoa, crazy. That's called a tease, everybody. I am just Zach Law. This is Sharona, S-E-N.
Season.
Whatever, I'm going to keep saying it the way I want to.
Okay.
Now, I tend to have the point of view that it's stupid to put any of your emotional capital into a sports franchise. It's a bad idea. It's going to go bad places. But there's one exception, the 2001 through 2018 New England Patriots. We want to welcome back our auction leader, Mike Margosian, a 444 guru guy who took a year off NFL 10s just to give the rest of us a chance. And I believe he's got a special beer tonight. So welcome back to the show. First time since auction night, which was good for some, not for me.
Which Zach does not remember.
That's probably good. The finish you ended up in, it's probably good, best not to remember that. So it's great to be back, guys. It's good to see you. It's been, what, 6 months, something like that?
Yeah, I actually reached out, I think, the week the Titans are playing the Patriots. And it's probably better that we're kind of after the, running over with the truck. Of course, Sharona actually was the one who was telling me about, all the ref kind of stuff in that divisional game. And I still think maybe a couple of calls would have made it like 31-21 as opposed to 35-14. But, they did strangely, like the Patriots, I think, they have a reputation for not starting strong like in the Super Bowl. Well, they didn't start strong in the divisional game, but it didn't matter because they only needed 3 quarters to beat the Titans. They needed about 10 minutes to beat the Jaguars last weekend. So I'll ask, you've been through all this. The Patriots have won all these crazy games. They've won championships. How do you compare this to like last year's Super Bowl? I mean, were you really like at any point, oh, we're screwed?
Well, it was scary because you heard all the, Tom Coughlin, was with the Jags and obviously with the Giants. He was the one that took him down both times. So there was all that talk of, does he have the Pats number? Will it translate to the Jags defense? So it definitely was a little nervous because the way to beat Brady is be able to rush 4 and cover, and they could rush 4 and cover. So I knew it would be a tight game. And once it got down to the fourth quarter and you saw Bortles not doing anything in the fourth and the third, you kind of just knew that Brady had a chance and he was going to do something to march down. So never lost hope.
Yeah, in the Steelers game, the Jaguars kept getting like kind of hit to the mouth and they would respond every time. But in the second half, like they kicked that 54-yard field goal and I was like, oh man, they're not going to make that. And then they made another field goal. But it seemed like, at least it was like me listening to a Ringer podcast, that they were running some of those Kansas City plays and like they just ran out in the second half. Like they never could get Fournette going, and they have Blake Bortles at quarterback. So eventually it didn't end well, but yeah, it got tight because they did get stopped with like 10 minutes to go, but then the Jaguars went 3 and out and it was like, okay, never mind. And hey, Stephon Gilmore made a play for you. Come on.
Yep. It's crazy. The first half, what was it? Bortles was like 6 for 8 on third downs or something like that. And the second half, he was like 1 for 8 or something like that. So, that was just the crazy difference where they just stopped him on the first and second down, just gave him those long third downs, and Bortles just couldn't connect. So,
I don't know if this is like overall the least talented like defense they've had during this run, but they clearly like it's coaching and adjustments that they always make. And then Gronk had the same end that Travis Kelce did, like second quarter head-to-head hit. He's out. I'm sure the magic concussion dust that Tom Brady has, or whatever it is, the Russell Wilson magic water, he'll probably take it over the next 2 weeks. I have a feeling Gronk will play.
Bubbles.
Right.
I'm glad it's 2 weeks versus 1 week though. So
I don't know, it's going to be a long week because there was an entire day on Twitter they were talking about the Patriots wearing their white jerseys and how that's such a significant thing because the team wearing white has won 12 of the last 13. Hey, people bet on this stuff. This is serious.
Yeah.
So the degenerates like, Jen, they have to bet on something, right?
Yeah,
but you're happy. We lost Sharona on video. Oh my gosh, he went mute. So Sharona has wine tonight because I think she has no beer, which does not compute to me at all, and does not compute to Mike either. So Mike, what do you have this evening? What's your beverage?
I'm keeping it in the New England area. So I got Maine Beer Company. It's called Mean Old Tom. So I've had this since 2015. So a couple years ago. So it's actually a stout aged with natural vanilla. And as I've talked with you, Zach, I'm learning some stuff about cellaring. And cellaring stuff that's flavored with the vanilla, you basically lose all the vanilla. So don't cellar vanilla flavored or any of the flavored stuff really.
I had a wild ale that was a part of a brewery anniversary, and I kept it for 6 months, and it got really flat, and I was like, okay, that's not something you. Although I hear that sours and wild ales you can, but it's barrel aged stuff for me. I even have a 4-pack of Dragon's Milk in there. Which is good stuff. But I've been, I kind of alternate months. It's like stock up, drink, have those months. Well, drink both.
Mike, I converted Zach to Dragon's
I'm surprised you don't have cases of that. Surprised you're out.
Well, 2 years ago, I heard of this beer called Backwoods Bastard from Founders, which is a barrel-aged Scottish ale. And it was hard to find, so I assumed it was going to be very limited. So I bought a ton of it, and I have 10 4-packs downstairs. And now it's almost year-round, so it's almost like Dragon's Milk. So I clearly didn't stock up. It's not like Kentucky Bourbon Stout or Bourbon County, although I had a Bourbon County Stout that Matt Riddle actually sent me. That's what I drank during the Patriots game, and that's good. It's as they say, hot. It's very boozy, and I kind of want to hold on to the rest of mine, and apparently emergency vehicles are right outside. You can probably hear them in the background. It's how it goes. Professional audio over here. Yeah, but so once again, Patriots in the championship game. So Mike's happy. Not a bored happy. Still, it's the honeymoon period lasts 20 years in some cases. So it's all good.
Yeah, I've always said, if you win the championship, what do you get? A couple years of leeway. If you win 2 out of 3 years, you get 5 or 6 years. But if you win 3 and 4 years, like the Pats did in the beginning, you get easily 10 years. So if they do it again, I almost don't care what happens the next 10 years. Obviously, more Super Bowls the better, but if they suck the next 10 years, I'm not going to complain considering what they've done. So
I could see fans complain. Red Sox fans had the same thing Patriots fans had, the always beat up on, we always lose in painful fashion. And then they won a couple of championships, just a couple, boring. Yeah. And every year they don't make it. It's oh man, it's the end of the world. Yeah. But I do want to put up a stat here tonight. This is a fun fact from the Super Bowl. So the new Titans head coach, Mike Vrabel, has 2 Super Bowl touchdown receptions. The Tennessee Titans, Houston Oilers franchise, has 0 touchdown receptions in their career. The one time they made the Super Bowl, Eddie George had 2 rushing touchdowns. So Mike Vrabel, clearly they're going for that touchdown swag. And there's actually somebody showed a play of Matt Castle, who's currently the Titans' backup. Man, I hope he's not their backup anymore next year, but we'll see. Throwing a touchdown pass to him when he played with the Chiefs at the end of his career. I mean, Vrabel played a long time and had a good career, and he must have a reputation as a guy who's going to be a good coach, because the Texans lost 2 of their top players and their defense was just atrocious for the rest of the year. I was just thinking to myself, if Belichick lost his 2 best players, I have a feeling they wouldn't have finished 32nd. But there's some kind of projection that's happening. I don't know, Sharona, do you have feelings about the Vrabel era?
I really don't. I knew the name from somewhere, but I hadn't really had a chance to take a look at him or anything. And I guess he came from the Panthers, and of course, they've had a ton of success. So, I certainly think they could have done a lot worse, and have in the past.
They clearly have. Oh, that's a good beer. See,
what are you drinking, Zach?
This is the Wild Heaven Gravitational Wave, and it used to be just in the brewery. It's Imperial Stout brewed with smoked cocoa nibs and raspberries. And
ew.
There's the 5th anniversary Westbrook, which is in South Carolina, and it's a chocolate raspberry beer, and I drank the last one, and I probably won't be able to get another one. And this is pretty similar. I bought a 4-pack on Faith, and this is my color scheme right here.
I might like that.
But yeah, the Titans, I feel like that was a bold move by them to get rid of Malarkey. Clearly, Malarkey was grousing about the fact that the rumors were out that they were going to get rid of him. But I just don't think he and Mariota were going to quite jive. His wanting to run like the 1978 Steelers offense just wasn't going to work. I mean, it's not quite like that because they did throw the ball some, but they're pretty much replacing the entire staff. I think there's like a strength coach who's staying. I mean, the rest of the coaches are under contract, but I have a feeling they're going to get replaced. And they've already tried like the co-offensive coordinator, Ohio State, they tried to get. He said no. They were going after the Cardinals defensive coordinator, but the Giants signed him. So, yeah, they're still working on putting that staff together. I actually thought they had an advantage.
That's kind of the thing with an up-and-coming guy and a guy who isn't all that established, just putting together the staff. And, at least they gave Mike Vrabel a little more opportunity to do that, which they didn't do to another Mike. That they seem to like Mike's.
Yeah, Munchak got done wrong. He got done dirty, as they say. That's a unfortunate strike year when they didn't have free agency. So yeah, he had trouble. But the last Titans quarterback to start 16 games, Matt Hasselbeck, unfortunately. So there you go.
I just looked up a funny Vrabel stat. I knew this. I didn't know it was the updated through Kansas City, but he has 10 career catches. What's your guess on how many touchdowns he has?
10 for 10. I think his career, so that includes the Super Bowl, he had 12 catches in his career for 17 yards and 12 touchdowns. And I don't know, maybe he dropped one, but they just ran that play a lot. Like the first year of our Dynasty League, my dad was playing in the finals, and he had Vrabel on. It was an defensive league, and he caught 2 touchdowns, and he still lost. But that's just the weirdness. They don't do that anymore. They've really worked up their offensive players now,
Yeah.
Even though they're kind of down to the dregs. I mean, put the odds on like Danny Amendola actually making it through 16 games, and just their never-ending pipeline of those kind of slot receiver guys who just are wily, That's a good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Jeez.
I do want to mention this is non-football related, but I did want to say, today was the day that Larry Nassar, the guy who was associated with USA Gymnastics, just got sentenced to like 175 years in prison. And I think, that was probably underselling it. That was the ongoing story. I don't know if it's kind of been in the news, but kind of not, because it is gymnastics about the fact that he sexually assaulted or abused, I forget how many women it was, I think, above 100. But anyway, good for the justice system for getting one right. Michigan State finally, I don't know, those Big Ten schools, you gotta keep an eye on them. But I don't know, just feel like I was something to bring up. So
Sharona, Zach, are you happy with the hire? I asked Zach 2 days ago. He was like, save it for the show. Okay.
Exactly. And I got to sit on sometimes I don't say everything. I just felt they needed to make a change. Now, hiring a defensive, I don't even know if it matters. Belichick's a defensive coach. Their offense has been pretty good since he's been there, at least after the first couple years of Brady being, game manager. He's clearly progressed past that. And it's just like Mario's kept having new guys after new guys after new guys. And he will work his ass off. He might get injured every game, but they have to figure out what they have with this era, because they have basically 2 more relatively cheap years of Mariota, and then the price goes up. So they have to see what they have, and they have to do something with their draft. I mean, that's one thing that was amazing. We didn't even talk about the Eagles. I feel bad for poor Josh Ducaster, our Vikings fan friend, because the Vikings just got wiped off the field by the Eagles. And that was a very impressive game, because just 2 years ago, the Eagles traded like in a draft practically to get Carson Wentz, and yet they hit on like every free agent guy, kind of like early Patriots where they would get all the cheap free agents and they would somehow work out, like Antoine Smith. If you remember, of course you remember him.
Oh, yeah.
Who would forget?
I do.
Yeah.
I remember him. I had him on a fantasy team.
Who had been
He played for the Titans, didn't he? Did he play for the Titans one year?
He might have been. I mean,
I think he did.
Was one of those
right
guys that was like a 27-year-old rookie, and he still played in the NFL for like a decade. It was crazy, but yeah, they always got like guys off the scrap heap at running back, and this year they got like mid-level guys, and it worked out. But the Eagles had a good game. They've been selling a lot of those dog masks, so that's been good. I don't know. I know the defense is set up, but then the Jaguars defense was pretty set up for success against the Patriots. But it's just like expecting Nick Foles to have a game like he had the game of his life. I mean, he's had, Chip Kelly had a little run there.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy that you drafted in the 9th round the next year, and you're like, what did I do? After that one good year he had, and maybe he made himself some money. And I think Case Keenum might have lost himself some money in that game. But you probably feeling okay about the rematch? I mean, I don't know. Minnesota at home would be considered a tougher matchup.
Yeah, that's got to be tougher. And I think, the Philly defense is still pretty good, but, not Minnesota. But, I mean, obviously Foles torn apart. But I'd rather have Belichick tear apart Foles than Belichick tear apart Case Keenum. Because I think Foles is just a basket case, and Belichick will get in his head. He'll melt down. He'll throw some picks or something. And it could be the biggest Patriot win, I think, like score-wise.
Interesting.
Not to be able to keep up, I think.
On that Jim Schwartz defense, okay.
So,
I'll win by a touchdown.
I'm going to take that bet.
I don't know what Eagles are going to do offensively, though. I mean, their running game is not powerful. That's kind of how you beat the Pats, is you really, actually get a really good run game on them, and then you can open it up. But if you can't run, they just shut everything else down. And I don't think J.J. and Blunt are going to, do a whole lot.
It's LeGarrette Blunt revenge game. Come on, everybody.
Well, Doug Peterson did coach Alex Smith in Kansas City, and he does kind of come from that mindset. It's got, I told Zach that I wasn't even remotely interested, but I do like Jim Schwartz, and so I'd kind of like to see what he does with this defense. We'll see if I watch the Super Bowl this year.
You're going to watch it.
Really?
Maybe.
Did you watch the Titans beatdown since you were talking about the ref stuff, Sharona?
No, I had a bunch of people sending me messages, so that's why I asked you.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because like when the Titans made the playoffs, it was because Jody Smith, I think, said, "Hey, congratulations." Otherwise, you wouldn't have known. But speaking of some of our like fantasy alum, so what just happened in Massachusetts to allow MFL 10s? Like you were considered an MFL 10 like guru, and then last year, your love was taken away from you. I don't know how you made it. You gave us a chance. We had a chance last year. Now it's over. So what happened this year? And are you already invited to the first one? Because I know they start 5 minutes after the Super Bowl, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how regulated it got just all of a sudden, and it just got expensive. And MFL would have to pay like $50,000 or $100,000 just to go in Massachusetts, and then they have to do that in all the other states, which is comical because DraftKings is headquarters in Massachusetts. So it's kind of crazy that it was that many hurdles to kind of jump through.
Politicians, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But luckily, Fanball kind of acquiring the MFL 10 rights and kind of taking that over, they're already here doing the DFS stuff. So being able to just take that on, and they already had all the regulations set up. So instantly, Massachusetts and a bunch of other states, I think it's all states but 5 now that it works in. So it's fantastic, right? Back in the game.
So you mean my fantasy league won't be doing these anymore? It's been shifted over now?
Yep. They actually transferred over if you had like remaining balances, and I actually had some credits from all the second place finishes. I actually had credits sitting in MFL for like a year. I couldn't do anything with them. I couldn't play with them. I couldn't take them out because they were credits. They weren't cash. So those got moved over to Fanball. So now I have like $150 that I could use before.
Oh, cool.
That's pretty cool.
What about Tennessee? Do you know what the status of Tennessee is? Because I don't think I could
Tennessee
play.
was the same. Maybe it's nationwide. I don't know. I guess you'll have to check.
I think if you're allowed to do DFS, you're allowed to do the MFL 10s because there's like 5 states that you can't do DFS in. So if it's one of those,
I know the state of Washington is one. Washington State, you can buy pot, but you can't play daily fantasy. What a strange world we live in. But of course, bearing the lead, if no one knows, MFL 10s. The basic concept is it's a 12-team league. Everybody puts in $10. The winner gets $100, and it's just best ball, and you just draft, and that's it. And they do have the 25s and the 50s and the 100s, but they also have the 50-50, which added last year, which I really like. Instead of the top 6 cashing in, it's like the top 5 cash in, then the 6th person gets like a free league the next year.
So I have some details on kind of the new setup that.
Why am I talking about it? You clearly are going to know. If anybody knows, like stouts and this. Okay, go for it. You're the guy.
If people know Scott Fish, almost everyone knows him. He's kind of been the one kind of running.
Oh, right. He works for them.
He's over there. He's been there for, about a year or 6 months or something like that.
Oh, man. So Scott Fish doing it? Oh, my gosh. He's going to do all kinds of crazy stuff because he likes the weird leagues.
So he's kind of spearheading that. So he was asking me questions a month or two ago about, if you could do MFL 10s again, what would you think of this? What would you think of that? So I was like, okay, are you running your own? What are you doing here? And then come to find out, then Fanball acquired it. So boils down to there's going to be a lot of different options now, which is cool. So there's going to be the classic, first place gets the $100 for the $10 one. But then they also added another one where the top 4 get paid. So it's $70 for first, $20 for second, $10 for third, and then a $5 credit for fourth. The top 4 you get paid now. And they're doing that 50-50 where the top 5 get $20. So you double your money. And then 6th place gets $5 credit. So you get half your entry back for the next year. And so they're doing MFL 10
off on the credits because that was what I remembered is like it used to be. I can't actually. Was it 100 for first and second place got a credit? I think that's what it used to be for 10.
Yes. It used to be 10, but now because of all the regulations and the cost of everything, they actually had to. There was a big compromise. There was a lot of back and forth. So now they're doing $100 for first and just a $5 credit as opposed to 10. But the thing they kind of added in to make up for that a little bit is they're doing like this big grand prize thing. They're doing first place, whoever gets the highest score in all MFL 10s all season wins like $50,000 or $10,000 or something like that. It's a crazy amount.
Cool.
And then another, I think, second to the 50th highest scores get, a few $100 or something like that. So they're adding a little, kind of grand prize pot, which is pretty cool.
So clearly I should be reaching out to Scott when this is opening up and see if we can do one, because that was one thing I like doing. You just get a feel for value of players in this when people have money involved. Like if you do like a mock draft where like Yahoo's like, no random people show up and they disappear in the second round. If you do a league where people have money on it, you get value. And it's very interesting to see with these kind of leagues, rookie value. Like before the draft, there are a couple names that people know that are high, but usually the rest are really cheap. Of course, I'd say like a guy like Kamara last year, he was pretty cheap all the way through the year thanks to the Adrian Peterson situation. But it is like I would try to do like one in like March and like one in June and then maybe one in like August or September. And of course, last year I totally forgot until the end. I did a bunch at the last minute and really, really roundly just totally sucked on that. So that was not fun. But you really do spread it out. Don't have 4 drafts at once unless, you're like Mike and doing, he's got a little bit of house money there. So you're going to still work like 4 for 4. I know it's still early to probably talk about next year in fantasy. Maybe not. But you probably have plans, right?
Yeah, I mean, last year I, wrote a little bit in the beginning, and then it was kind of tough to kind of keep up on some of the player stuff, not doing them. It was really hard from the outside view doing them. So TJ kind of took over that and was folding it into his player evaluation stuff. So I kind of tailed off the second half of the off season. So I think this year I'm going to try to get back into it. Maybe not as much as I used to do, but maybe, a little more high level strategy kind of stuff and kind of things. And my specialty is more the strategy as opposed to the actual player evaluation. So let's see how that goes. Kind of sporadic, probably not as routine as I used to do it, but still going to do some stuff, especially in the beginning where all these new kind of setups are kind of melding out.
Well, like 2 years ago, it was really weird to go like wide receiver heavy early. And then last year, because of the way running back sucked 2 years ago, people went wide receiver crazy. Is there like going to be a shift back since we had some decent years? The Gurleys and of course a lot of the rookies did really well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, we saw that swing in the very early ages of the NFL 10s back in 2013, 14, even a little 15. It was very running back heavy. And then, like you said, until 2 years ago, where it was like the running back apocalypse, everyone got killed that wasn't running back heavy. And now last year was like the wide receiver apocalypse, so it's going to be swing the other way. So people are going to probably have to load up on wide receivers again because they're going to be cheap, and all the running backs will be going early. So it's probably going to be a swing back, like you said, where all the running backs are going to be going early, and it's going to be very running back heavy.
And do you get involved at all, like with draft Twitter? Because it's either going to be really fun or really terrible to just watch the way people are just reviewing the quarterbacks this year, because there's so many guys that are like potentially first round guys, but it doesn't seem like we have that clear cut top like 5 pick this year. But we'll see. I mean, what would we have? 4 months of the draft? Oh boy.
Yeah.
I mean, long 4 months.
Yeah, I did. For me, I'm not a huge college guy. I think I watch like one game a year, so I try to just absorb what other people are saying on the rookie stuff, do a little homework and stuff. But I try to go slow, and especially the NFL 10s early on, because I don't know the rookies to kind of gauge that. But they tend to go, on the later side, because you don't know where they're going to land and all that kind of stuff. So you can get the steals. Like I remember Zeke 2 years ago was going in the 3rd, 4th round, and then once he landed in Dallas, he was going in the 1st round. And then last year, the same with a few of them, like Fournette and like I think Cook was a big one. That was because it was perceived good landing spot, Minnesota. So everyone kind of jumped up once they got the good landing spots.
Well, let's discuss a different kind of strategy. We've been chatting back and forth about beer for a few years. So what has your strategy been with beer? It seems like you're not cellaring as much stuff and you're buying, maybe less. Did you first of all, of course, Bourbon County Stout, did you get a nice haul this year?
Yeah, I think I got 5 or 6 of them. I think it was last year I got a case. I got 12, and I've gotten in the past, 6 or 8 of each. But yeah, like I said, I think it was 3 years ago, 2014 and 15. I just bought tons of beer and just cellared the hell out of them, and just started drinking them last year and this year just to see kind of what worked, what didn't. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's the vanilla, the flavored ones. Don't age them because you lose all the flavoring. But just like the straight stouts and some of the porters, depending on the beer, can age pretty well. But yeah, I'm learning. I'm just drinking a lot and just cellaring just the select stuff that is kind of known to cellar, like the Bourbon County Stout or the KBS. So those things.
How many do you have in your cellar right now?
Total aging beers probably still 40 or so. Most of them bombers, or probably 2/3 bombers.
Party at Mike's house.
Yeah.
I know, of all the Super Bowl places, that'd be a good one. Now, do you save like 1 or 2 for Super Bowl Sunday? It seems like a special event.
Yeah, I got to pick out which ones I'm going to break out, but I don't want super heavy because I want to kind of stay lucid and actually enjoy the game without being on the floor.
That's a good. Did you get any of the Canadian breakfast stouts? That was one that hadn't been out in like 6 years.
No, I haven't been able to find those anywhere. So I have there's one liquor store I go to where if you buy a certain amount of 6-packs, you get like a hold card, so you can put that to hold any beer that they get in. And I've had one in for some, I don't even remember the name of it. I was talking to the guy and he's like, "Oh, get this some yearly thing that comes out," and did that like 3 years ago, and I haven't even heard anything. So who the hell knows what's going on with that? But yeah, I haven't even seen that Canadian anywhere.
Well, I traded for one because in Georgia, the regular Bourbon County was just above our limit. So we only had the coffee, which I don't really like coffee beer. So I bought a bunch. I have to trade them. And I got one of that Northwoods, and I traded it with a friend of mine to get the Canadian breakfast stout. And I'm like, Well, someone has a birthday coming up this week, so maybe then, or maybe Super Bowl. We'll see. Because Canadian breakfast stout is like it's kind of like the Kentucky breakfast stout, except it's got like maple syrup. So it's sweet. I've had it on draft. It's pretty good.
I had actually had
It's
one.
tough to find.
I had one a couple days ago. I had bought from Vermont, this place called Rock Art Brewery, and it was back 2014, and it was like maple syrup flavored and that kind of stuff. It was like a spruce something or other, and it actually aged pretty well. It kind of held that flavor, which was pretty cool. So I'm sure it's similar to that, which is pretty neat.
There's a beer out of Funky Buddha, which is in Miami. It's called Morning Wood, and it's got bacon. It's got maple. It's bourbon aged, and I actually think I had it. Well, no, I didn't have it the same day as the Bourbon County Stout. That would have been crazy, but it was one of the best, and I've saved that one up. And the emergency vehicles are back. It's just one of those days in Atlanta. It's very exciting. We didn't get, our snow is long gone. But yeah, okay. So we've talked beer, we've talked football. I'll leave it up to Sharona. Would that long-awaited article I think we've been hinting about has finally come out in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So I don't know if you want to ask questions or if you want some kind of introduction.
I have a bunch of questions, but some of them are very deep. So, Zach,
good thing I have beer. That'll help.
Well, we won't go into all of it tonight. We'll keep it light because Mike's here. But
I read the article.
Zach wrote a fantastic article, an amazing story about medical emergency he had a few years ago, and it really touched me. I mean, I had real tears in my eyes. I was struggling not to cry at the end when I read it, and from what I can gather, it's been very well received. And so, Zach, what is that experience? First of all, tell everyone how this all came about again. The article,
having a wife who's not that into football and not that into beer, well, like they say, sometimes with players you have to manufacture touches. So we have to, manufacture some events that we do together. So she said, "Hey, let's try this storytelling class." And I was like, "What is storytelling?" And it's like, "Well, it's kind of like spoken word. It's not really comedy, because when you do a comedy set, at least for me, the one time I did it, you had to memorize every word. But the storytelling, you have a starting line and you have a closing line. So the story I told started with my mom saying, 'Let's do something normal today.' And the whole idea was I was in a hospital bed, and my mom was like, 'Let's do something normal. Let's watch the news,' because I had been in a coma for 3 weeks and I had just gotten out and just been having these crazy nightmares because they'd given me drugs to get me out of the medically induced coma. And I was like, well, sure, let's do something normal today. So we turned on the news and we watched a plane fly into a building because it was 9/11. And I had to have my parents tell me repeatedly, is this happening? Because a lot of stuff that I was experiencing during that time wasn't real, because I came into the hospital August 16, 2001. And 24 hours later, I was having surgery because I had staph infection pooled in my back and I had a blood clot, and they had to put me in a medically induced coma, and they had to put a tracheotomy. I got this nice scar here, and I had a machine breathe for me. And then after about 3 weeks, I finally kind of evened out, and they thought they had the infection under control and the blood clot kind of under control. So they brought me back out. And about a week after that, 9/11 happened. So that was a bit of I used it as a normalizing kind of thing, because this allowed me and my parents to finally have like the same experience for the first time in a while, because their experience and my experience were totally different. I have, letters they wrote me. I have letters that friends wrote me while I was in the coma. And I've had to depend on other people to tell me what exactly happened during that time. But anyway, I did the storytelling class. I told the story at the beginning. I told the story at the end. And the woman who runs the class knows the editor at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who does this It's kind of a personal journey is what it's called. It's like a long form, it's like 3,000 to 4,000 words, and appears in Sunday newspaper. So we met, and she's like, well, go ahead and write it. And I was like, well, good news. I just went on a Google Doc and just spit out what I could remember. And what a surprise. I had a bunch of words there. So took a few passes, a few editing passes, and then I had a photographer come to my house to take those, kind of glamorous shots of me. And then that lovely picture of me holding the mustard up, because they were like, we got to take a picture of you doing normal stuff, because we're trying to contrast the pictures of me from 2001 with, nurses and doctors and current day stuff.
You had the Aaron Rodgers porn stash in one. I noticed that.
Yeah, obviously my parents were taking pictures of me when I was in the coma, but once I got out, they took pictures, because there was a nurse who actually took a picture of me, because they actually shaved me because it had been 3 weeks. I can't even in a medically induced coma, I can't grow a beard. I'll admit that right now. It's not possible. I've tried it since, and yeah, we just had like a book of some pictures, and they were from kind of that time period. And luckily I had saved them because they were, nice to have. I was trying to get pictures of my parents today included, but we weren't able to make that happen. But yeah, the story actually came out a week early. I thought it was coming out last weekend when I wasn't going to be in town, and it came out a week early. So, that song, Rolling Stone, I buy 10 copies for my mom. I bought 10 copies of this for my mom, and I think it was one time you retweeted it, Sharona, that all the fantasy football people finally caught on and were replying to me. And, it's not, as I say, and I had a coworker come up to me and I'm like, well, this isn't the kind of thing you just tell somebody just, hey, what's up? I had this near-death experience, Yeah. So it's all time and place. And it was weird to bring it out, because it's almost like the experience you have as a published author. You've written the book, but then you have a year of editing, and then a year or two before it gets published. And I had finished writing this thing Thanksgiving-ish. I mean, I had to edit some, but I was about 2 months past, and then it came out, and I was like, oh yeah, I wrote that. I remember. And of course, the experiences, when this happened, I don't think the Patriots had yet won a Super Bowl. So look at that. That's been a while.
So what was it like? Was this the first time that you had actually written about it?
I mean, I've written about it and I've talked about it some, and I just thought, because this was just the story that popped into my head that was appropriate for a storytelling class. I was like, well, a lot of the notes I have on this and a lot of the stuff I have, I don't even know where it is anymore. So I should probably write about it now and just get it out. I mean, I have right behind me, I have the notebook people wrote in. I have my discharge statement from the hospital. I have some of the bills from back then, including one that was $177,000. That was great. Insurance was a lot better back then, by the way. I probably put out about $2,000 for the whole deal, and I think it ended up being about $250,000, because I was in ICU for 3 weeks, and ICU is $10,000 a day.
Jeez.
So, but insurance was much better back then. I don't know what it'd be like now.
You probably don't want to know.
Probably don't want to know.
So what was it like revisiting that experience?
I mean, it's really hard to get back into that mind space, and it's also hard to project and try to think what I was like before. It was kind of I don't think I'm that different than I was before, but to remember what it was like, because I have some numbness in my legs, so to remember what it was like to have feeling there, kind of don't have that anymore. It's been a while, so it's definitely different. And just, I think over time, just having a lot of gratitude, just all the people in my life, and not a ton of those people are still in, some of my friends, Don was around back then. Don was hanging out with me during that time when people were bringing in food, and he and Chuck were eating it all.
So you don't think that it changed you? I thought you don't.
I mean, I'm sure it did. I don't know. it's hard to say. I can't say I have this dramatic like lesson I've learned, you know, and have this thing where I can like throw it out there and say, hey, this is what I got out of this thing. It's like, you know what I got out of it? I didn't die. And you know what? When things happen in your life, there are a lot of people who are there to help you out. And sometimes you're able to do things day by day that you can't imagine being able to do if you had to see it all at once. When I had to like give myself shots in the stomach twice in the day, I had to do one at a time because it was just like so outside, you know, I couldn't draw blood. Like I was scared of needles. And then they were like, hey, by the way, you got to give yourself a shot in the stomach twice a day. Huh? Well, otherwise you have to stay in the hospital. Okay. It was only 6 months, and actually it probably was more like 4 because they started it while I was in the hospital. So it wasn't so bad. And, you know, I got to discover lots of great people, and I got lots of good beer, and I got to discover some mediocre Titans football, but that's, you know, not the most important thing that happened over the time. They were good, you know, then.
Do you stay in touch with any of your nurses or the doctors or anybody?
Well, I found out one of the doctors, because the 2 main doctors who were there, they were just like brand new. They were like baby doctors. They weren't a ton older than I was at the time. In fact, one of them, he wrote one of the notes that was in the story, Dr. David Honeycutt. And Allison actually tracked him down. I think he's in Nashville, so I should probably try to look him up. But I was like his first official like patient.
Wow.
So he got to go in there, and you know, he wrote that note that's still important. It's like, you know, you've gotten through this terrible thing, so really anything in life you can probably overcome because you've been through this. It's like, well, it's something to think about, you know.
You said something in there that stuck out to me, and I wish I'd gone back and pulled it up, but it was like was a statement about that it made you more aware of, more empathetic as a person, and more aware of other people's like feelings and emotions.
Well, it's true. I talked about how my parents had brought in like a little CD player, and I listened to music for the first time when I came out of a coma, and I just couldn't control myself. I was just bawling. And the day of 9/11, I was just crying because I was feeling, you know, you knew that people were dying, but I was actually feeling that. So it was a very intense thing. And of course, as my wife will attest to, I don't express emotion very much. I think I've gone the other way. Like I've overcompensated for that. Like that was out of my control. I couldn't do anything about it. So now I'm very controlled, but I've been able to kind of release a little bit of it every once in a while. And it's okay. But it's because I've had this experience. Definitely anybody who's going through something like this, yeah, I can definitely empathize with people, because this is just not something you expect to happen in your life. I'm sure before it happened, I was like, where would I go if I was sick? Like, what emergency room would I go to? And it was just my girlfriend at the time took me to the right place, because Emory was a very good hospital. And they had to do some serious detective work to figure out how to finally get me right, because it took a while. I mean, there's side effects, and you learn things like, you know, when I first came out of the coma, the doctors really thought that I was having mental issues. I know it's shocking for nobody to hear that from me, but I was just acting crazy. I was like throwing my clothes off and acting, you know, spinning around in the bed, and I had all these IVs in me. So I was just, you know, causing almost damage. And the doctors were like, let's put him back in. And my mom's like, you know what? That's actually the way he acted like as a child. And so they waited, and I finally kind of came back. And if my mom hadn't have stepped up, they might have put me back in, and I might not have come out. And that's a very sobering thing about anything medical, is you really have to kind of stand up for yourself, and you really have to do your research, and you really have to, like, it's kind of gut feeling and knowing yourself and knowing your loved ones, and making a call based on that. And it's just, it's a very narrow line sometimes.
Did you learn anything about yourself revisiting all of that and writing about it?
What do I learn? I don't learn anything. What are you talking about?
You're a man.
That's the last deep question I'll ask you tonight.
Really? Do you have shallow questions?
Yeah.
I know you have. I know you're ready. I know you
What
have
was the
stuff.
first food you asked for when you were lucid and finally able to say, God, I want this to eat?
Well, the food they give you in the hospital is pretty terrible, and I actually wrote about how they were giving me cranberry juice because I had lost so much weight that I had to consume calories, and it was hard for me to do it because when they first bring you back, when you're on a liquid IV diet, you can't go back to like eating regular food. You have to go. It takes a while. So they were giving me juice, and of course, cranberry was the last juice always available in the fridge, and I still don't like cranberry juice to this day, but that's just the way it goes. And then they
That's
gave
why you look
me
at me funny when I drink cranberry
there was
juice.
something
I
called
wonder.
chopped chicken because it was this chopped. It was the hospital food was awful. So by the time I was healthy enough, my parents would just bring in food. But they'd bring me in like a hamburger and I might eat 2 bites of it. I mean, it was a while until I was able to eat. As I said in the story, it was like once I got out, my parents would take me for like a daily milkshake. And somehow I managed to get from like 167 and then all of a sudden I was 210. I'd gone the other way. I'd gone too far and I had to, finally get back into it. And I mean, one of the nurses there told me, you get to rebuild your body because my muscles had atrophied. I was 3 weeks of nothing. Walking up a set of stairs was a challenge for me. So I kind of started an exercise program and I pretty much exercise every day now. And it's just a routine I have that I probably didn't have before. Although I was really good at flag football back in the day. They used to I used to be the fast guy. I used to run the 9 routes and go past everybody, but that those days probably have passed.
So, are you going to write another one? Is that it? Or are you going to do some more? Or?
Well, that's probably it for now. I've tried to have a goal like last year. I wanted to do like 10,000 steps every day, but I ended up injuring my calf like randomly, and I had to like take some time off. And I was just very stubborn. I didn't want to quit. I mean, I averaged more. And then this year I'm like, well, I'm going to try to write 1,000 words a day. And I've been doing that, but it's just kind of rambling nonsense, lots of beer and football talk as usual. So we'll see what comes next. I definitely, I don't know. I've had some dalliances in the fiction. I've written tried to write the Great American Fantasy Football novel and nothing really much came of it. But I mean, it was actually a pretty good idea. I had the idea that there's a fantasy football league and one of the guys in the league dies. So they spend the year following his team, which was the Detroit Lions. And so in the first draft of the book, I actually had the Titans and the Lions playing in the Super Bowl.
Oh.
And the Lions won, and there goes Sharona. We lost Sharona. See, I mentioned the Titans in the Super Bowl, and Sharona disappeared. See,
it just implodes.
It's so out of the realm of possibility. And actually, the Lions won in a safety in overtime. And then I rewrote the story based on what actually happened that year, and I think that was one of the Giants' years. But anyway, it was a fun thing to do, and it turned out to be nothing. But it's fun to put words down. It's something I do. I just don't consider it something. I don't know. I'm weird when people are like, "You wrote this story and it's really good." I'm like, I still can't take it in. I can't accept that it happened, because the people who write these personal journeys, a friend of my wife's like a New York Times bestseller, and she wrote one of those, and I'm like, well, I'm not on that level. It's like, well, I'm in they put me in, whatever they said the minimum height to get on the roller coaster. Well, I got on the roller coaster, so I wrote it, and there you go. It's out there. Nothing you can do about it.
It was very good. I thought it was excellent. So congratulations, you're a published author, Mr.
That's right.
Law.
Yeah, and I actually can fund my beer habit for a month or two, so that's nice. I had to figure something out. I don't know.
Mike, do you want to ask him anything about it?
No, I just think it was, very, touching story. I actually sent it to my wife today, and she read it, said like, I told her, I was like, oh, no, the podcast with I'm doing the podcast with this guy tonight, and this is his story that he had published, a few weeks ago. So she read it, and we're talking a few minutes about it, and how at the end with like the dancing at the was the wedding,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, and it's just touching story when it was well written, very good story. I mean, not a bad first short story for a class class assignment.
Well, I mean, that wasn't exactly a short story. I think initially the first draft was like 3,500 words, ended up being like 2,600. They definitely chopped some stuff, but probably stuff that needed to be chopped. But my friend Judd, who was like my best friend from college, he visited while I was in the coma. And he was the one who said, he'll dance at my wedding, which is, of course, something I didn't hear. But, yeah, next year when his wedding happened, I have a feeling if I hadn't been in the hospital, my parents wouldn't have gone to that wedding, but they did anyway. And, yeah, it was a nice way to, you have to do it. It's a literary device. You got to tie it all together. You got to have something in the beginning a little bit, and then you bring it back in the end. That's what you do. You tie it all together.
I want to read the thing. I want to read the full one. Will you let me read the full one?
I have so many versions of it because I saved it as like Google Docs, so I have probably a few in there. And by the way, I got to give credit to Allison, of course, my wife, because she helped. She got this going. She knew the editor, and she helped. She got me in the class. She helped edit a few times, which it could be a little bit testy, but I think it was for the greater good of the story, definitely.
Well, here's a question though: when did you have your first beer after all of that?
I think I drank part of a Bass during recovery, and I have a feeling back in that time I would like buy a 6-pack, and it would probably last me like 3 weeks. And
yeah,
then I had my transition beers. I almost think I need to have a beer podcast because it's like the journey from drinking crap beer to like good beer, because there wasn't a ton, but Bass and Newcastle, those were like two of my transition beers that like got me from drinking the swill to drinking the good stuff. But there were only like
early 2000s. It wasn't.
There were only like 2 breweries that were around. I think it was Sweetwater and Red Brick, and now there are 40 breweries in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area. And this weekend, of course, for me, this is birthday weekend. This is my Obama year. I'm 44, so I'm going to be heading out with a friend of mine, and we have to decide what to do. And there's just so many choices. Like, I don't know, Mike, when it comes to this, are you more of a like you want to go to like different breweries, or you want to go to like a really good beer bar that has a bunch of different options?
If I've never been to the area before, I'd like to go, a lot of different breweries. But I'm, a big fan of going to a, bar or even a brewery that has a lot. I mean, I was actually down in Hawaii last month and went to the Maui Brewing Company.
Oh yeah, how was Hawaii? And you drank beer and you sent pictures, and that's what you should do. It's good.
Exactly. But I mean, we went to the Maui Brewing Company and they have 30 of their beers on tap.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I didn't know they made that many. It was
That's awesome.
So we did a couple flights there.
I can't remember if it's the brown. It's like a coconut brown. That I used to be one that was like in my rotation.
That was good on tap there. I had it there on tap, fresh.
We only went to this winery when I was in Maui. We go to brewery. That's a downside. Now every time we go to a different city, I'm like, I want to go to a brewery. We were in Mexico last year, and I was like, oh, they have any breweries? And it didn't quite work out. But that's part of like vacation planning is like, well, where would be a good? I mean, clearly the Northeast would be a great place. But we have in Atlanta this thing called the Beltline, which is kind of like it connects different parts of the city, and you can go and kind of walk from beer location to beer location. So we might do it. It depends on the weather. It's supposed to rain, so that's going to kind of suck. But I don't know. What else? You got anything else, Sharona? I don't want to leave you hanging.
I want to ask how Allison is doing.
Allison's doing well. She's doing pretty well.
Good. Awesome. All right. Yeah. I can't think of anything else. Am I missing anything? No, over it or not tonight?
I didn't write any down, unfortunately. Do you get any flashbacks? Well, I think your flashbacks of the Tennessee head coaching search were me sending you tweets